Well, all month long we've been talking about enlightenment. That's kind of a big, overpowering, maybe even scary word for some people. Enlightenment simply means getting it. Seeing the big picture. Understanding how everything fits together, how everything's connected. You might have heard of that joke about the Buddhist monk that goes up to the hot dog vendor and says, "Make me one with everything." Well, we all want to feel that sense of integration, that connection, that oneness, and we look for it in our relationships, in a community, like spiritual community, like we have here, being integrated and connected within ourselves, or even being out in the middle of the desert, like Susan is out on Sidewinder Road out there, and feeling that oneness with that life essence, that energy that pulsates through all things. We all want that sense of connection. So we've been talking about enlightenment, and in fact, the theme of the month is living an enlightened life. So I want to ask you this morning, are you living an enlightened life? Are you living a life that gets it? Do you believe that it's possible to live an enlightened life? And if not, why not? If so, what does that look like for you? What does that involve for you? And we've been taking a look at some enlightened events and some enlightened people this month and gleaning from them what we can. The first week of December, my talk was Awakening the Light. And that was the day before Bodhi Day, which is the day in which Buddhists around the world celebrate or commemorate the time when Siddhartha Gautama became the Buddha, the awakened one. Now you might be saying, "Oh, now come on, that's the Buddha. I mean, the Buddha. I mean, I'm not one of those people that's going to shave my head and wear a robe and sit in lotus position under a tree and meditate all the time. That's just not for me." Well, it might look like from the outside, from the Buddha's experience, that that's what it takes to be enlightened. But if we dig deeper, if we get to the essence of the Buddha's story, we find an element of enlightenment that we all can relate to. The Buddha had a problem. There was a perplexing situation that had been brought to his attention. There was a troublesome thing that he was trying to figure out an answer for. And he was determined to do whatever he could to find a solution to it. You ever been in that place? Having something that you just can't even rest until you find the answer. You're willing to look in many different ways, and the Buddha tried many different ways to answer that question. Finally, he determined to sit under the tree in meditation, and the result was his mind opened up, his heart opened up. He gained a greater understanding of unfathomable truth, and he began to fully comprehend the situation. So the essential element of enlightenment that we can glean from that is a willingness to open your heart and your mind. A willingness maybe to consider a new way of thinking, a new way of looking at a situation, and a willingness to dig deeper in order to understand unfathomable truth. So the question I want to ask you this morning, or the question you might want to ask yourself this morning is, am I willing to open my heart and my mind? Am I willing to consider a new way, a new thought? Am I willing to dig a little deeper in order to understand unfathomable truths? And then the next Sunday, which was last Sunday, my talk was entitled A Miracle of Light, and we talked about the Hanukkah story, in which a miracle of light happened for them, and it caused them to have a greater faith in God the light. Now, Hanukkah began this last Tuesday, by the way. And you might be saying, no, that whole Judaism thing? Oh, I mean, that's not for me. I mean, all the rules and the regulations, I'm definitely not that kind of person. And, 613 commandments to keep, like not eating pork and tithing and things like that. Oh, that's just not for me. But if you dig a little deeper, if you get to the essence, especially of the Hanukkah story, you find an essential element of enlightenment that we can all relate to, and that is a faith in the good. They wanted a good thing. They wanted the sanctification, the purification of their sacred space. They didn't know how it was going to happen because they only had enough light for one day, and the purification ritual was an 8-day ritual. But they lit the menorah anyway, and as a result, a miracle happened. Have you ever been in that place where you wanted a good thing to happen, and you didn't know how it was going to happen? Like maybe you just wanted a relationship to be easy and peace-filled. You wanted all your relatives to get along at holiday. You said, I don't know how this is going to happen, but I'm going to take the steps towards that vision of good. I'm going to do what I can towards that vision of good, and leave the rest up to a power that's good and only good. Or maybe you wanted your body temple to be sanctified and purified, filled with health and vitality and strength. You say, I don't know how this is going to happen, but I'll do the work. I'll take steps towards that vision of good. I'll go to the gym. I'll cut down on the cookies, whatever, and then leave the rest to a power that desires for me to live a life that's good and only good. So the question to ask yourself this morning is, do I believe in the good? Do I believe that life is good? Do I believe that there's one power and presence that is good and only good? That's a very powerful belief. So here we are at the time of observing the birth of Jesus, Christmas time. You know, all those stories happened so long ago, centuries ago. It's kind of hard to relate to them in many ways. And we tend to look at those times as if those were the times when miracles occurred, and the people back then were magical beings of some sort, you know. Like I talk about in my book, we kind of romanticize that time, and we get to thinking that Charlton Heston really did look like Moses. You know? Or Elizabeth Taylor really looked like Cleopatra. Or Jesus really looked like Willem Dafoe. That's a stretch. But we kind of set apart people like Jesus and Buddha as if they were elite or different or special or magical in some way. And then this whole idea of enlightenment, well, we can just put that aside because that's reserved for those kind of people. But Jesus' entire message was that we're no different, that we can do what he did. He said, greater things than these will you do. In the Unity Worldwide website, it says, we believe that Jesus expressed his divine potential and sought to show humankind how to express ours as well. We see Jesus as a master teacher of universal truths and as our way shower. He showed us a way that we can be divine beings having a physical experience. I'm not sure if Jesus said that or if George said that. But Jesus never said, worship me. He did say, follow me. Big difference. When you follow somebody, you walk in the path that they've carved out through the woods for you. Remember doing that? Somebody's knocking down the bushes and you walk right in that path. To follow someone means to walk in their footsteps. Remember as a child when you try to walk in the footsteps of an older sibling or an adult and you try to get those big footsteps? To follow someone is to imitate them, to do as they do. Well, enlightenment is very rarely talked about in Christianity. In fact, you won't find the word enlightenment in the Bible. Jesus never said enlightenment. Never said that word. He did talk a whole lot about light and how we can be illumined. He boldly proclaimed, "I am the light of the world." There's nothing egotistical in that sentence. It wasn't like he was exalting himself above others, because he's not the only one. We're all the light of the world. He said, "You are the light of the world." Of course, I think he was talking to a group of very rich, successful, prosperous people. No. I think he was at the Grammys, and he was talking to multi-instrumentalists and people who could sing and dance and act, and very talented people. No. He was giving a commencement speech to a group of very educated people who were receiving PhDs. No. He was speaking to regular people, like all of us, and reminding them that they had a divine light within them. Jesus' message was always spiritual. It was never concerned with outward appearances. It was always the inward reality. Now you might say, well, but he said, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden." That sounds like shining the light, razzle-dazzle them. No, Jesus' message was always spiritual. And when you read these passages in a spiritual way, then you see with spiritual eyes, and you dig deeper to the essence, you realize that the metaphysical meaning of city is consciousness. Whenever you see the word city, it means consciousness. And the metaphysical meaning of the word hill or mountain is always spiritual realization or higher consciousness or prayer. So on the outside it looks like it says a city set on a hill cannot be hidden. But the essence says a consciousness grounded in spiritual realization cannot be hidden. A consciousness that's built on prayer cannot be hidden. A consciousness that gets it shines through the life through which it lives. You say, but he said, "You are the light of the world. Let your light shine in such a way that they will see your good works and glorify their Father who is in heaven." Again, Jesus' message was always spiritual, never concerned about outward expression. When you look at that passage, that glorify your Father who is in heaven, through spiritual eyes, you remember that Jesus called God Father. That was his name for God. He was comfortable with that. Some of us aren't comfortable calling God Father. Some of us call God Mother, Father, God. Some of us call God the light. Some of us call God love or life, whatever. That was his name for God. The second thing that you get from this is that Jesus called God Father. He knew and he taught that heaven is not some far-off location. Heaven is where? Within. And to glorify simply means to lift up or to elevate. So then that phrase becomes more real to us, because it really says, as we begin to radiate that light, that divine light that's within us, as it begins to just exude through us, because we have a consciousness grounded in prayer and spiritual realization, that others become aware of that. They begin to sense this intangible essence radiating out from us. And it encourages them to elevate the divine light within themselves too. One of the very first metaphysical books that I read was Emmett Fox, The Sermon on the Mount, and I just have to read you this paragraph. Is that okay? Because he's talking about when you shine your light, when you let your light shine, he says, when you truly live this life, then it does not in the least matter what your present circumstances may be, or what difficulties you may have to struggle against. You will triumph over them all. You will make your demonstration, and not only will you make your own demonstration in the quickest possible time, but you will be, in a very positive and literal sense, a healing and illumining influence on all around you, and a blessing to the whole human race. Get this. You will be a blessing to men and women in remote places and times, men and women of whom you have never heard and who will never hear of you. A light in the world. In fact, startling and wonderful as that may sound. So this morning, may you realize more fully, may you open your heart and your mind to a greater understanding and realization of the divine light within you. May miracles of light occur in your life, and may you embrace the light that you are, the light that you give, and the light that you shine. And so it is. So we're going to go into a meditation time.